Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, let's talk about a driver that may lose his seat. I mean, and honestly, this is not surprising, is it?
No, Nyck de Vries, world champion in his own right in Formula E, and has, on the way up, done everything a driver can be expected to do. He's had a similar upbringing to, Sargent and many others that have come through Formula 2. But it's just not gone his way, and he's had silly mistakes. And unfortunately, as we all know, Helmut Marko is not one to be patient. Now, the rumors after Miami are that Ricciardo could potentially take the seat. I don't think that's realistic.
Well, Nyck de Vries was one of the feel-good stories of last year. And like you said, he's had a great career, and he did well last year. And we thought, this is perfect. He's probably going to come in and do an adequate job, but he just has not this year. And it's disappointing because that was a fun story. But why don't you think Ricciardo would do this?
I think Ricciardo would be happy to do it, but he has said that he wants to be in a top team. So does he gain anything by putting himself in a situation where he's being compared to a relative rookie in Tsunoda, who's dialed in now? He's just come off what was his worst ever season in a competitive car, or relatively so, at McLaren.
But an F1 seat is an F1 seat.
I agree. And don't get me wrong, I think if he was offered it, he would take it. I don't think it's the right direction for Helmut Marko, and I don't think it sends a signal to all those waiting in the wings, a la the 8 Red Bull drivers, Crawford included, that all want to be in that Formula 1 seat. And Lawson, no question about it, is the odds-on favorite for that seat. And I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here. I think it's more likely for 2 reasons. One, Helmut has been very generous in his praise of Lawson, and Lawson went straight from Japan to Baku. He's already started his Super Formula campaign and has been on great form. He's been there at most of the races. He's ready. He's tested the car. His times are good. And my inside baseball note is, guess who his roommate was when they were living in Milton Keynes?
Who?
Yuki Tsunoda.
Ah, that I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, so they lived together. Well, they met each other at the Toyota Racing Series, which Lawson won, and Tsunoda was 3rd or 4th, I think. But they became good friends, and they both went back to Europe, and they both did F2. And I believe that, like I said, they shared. I remember seeing some video from Red Bull of him helping Yuki pack up to go to Europe. Pretty funny.
And what do you think about Yuki's year?
The more and more I see of Yuki, the more impressed I am. I mean, yeah, sure, he gets some issues on the radio, but so does Hamilton.
It's funny we seem to talk about that a lot, which is obvious because he does get so emotional. But if you just take that out, he's kind of overshadowing his own pretty decent season, isn't he?
Yeah, it's the old story of motor racing. You can't dial in speed, but you can dial it out. And what I mean by that is he's fast enough, and Marko has said so. And his overtakes have been excellent. He's a clean racer. He's an aggressive racer. And sure, he's got a temperament, which is actually good for a Japanese. We're so used to this
unusual,
shy and quiet Japanese who, frankly, beat themselves by being not strong enough mentally and, verbally to their team. Not so with Yuki. He is born and raised, he came through the Carlin. He learned his English from Carlin Mechanics, God help us. But, he's got all the swear words. He's got all the, he's got all the chutzpah of a non-Japanese. And I mean that in the most polite way. I don't think it's going to shock anybody to learn that the Japanese are very reserved and quiet and non-assuming people. And yet with a bit of fire in their belly, the Japanese can do anything.
Yeah, and plenty of great tradition of race car drivers coming out of Japan too,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that in the last 3 years, we've seen Tsunoda grow up. And I think he's a measure for anybody in the seat opposite, including de Vries. And I think that's actually adding to de Vries's problem, is that de Vries came in to save the day. Well, I say save the day, but, got the opportunity when Gasly went. And I think that, I think Yuki's holding his own.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem you've got is that Red Bull, Helmut Marko, they just have a track record of not being patient. So,
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I think Lawson rather than Ricciardo. I think it's obvious that at some point somebody is going to replace Checo at Red Bull.
Yeah.
A bad season, a falling out between the two of them, or Verstappen making good on his promise to leave the sport if they mess with it anymore. But Red Bull are looking for, in AlphaTauri, the next guy. And the next guy is not Daniel Ricciardo. So the next guy is Lawson.
Yeah. And how soon are they saying the possible, these rumors? I mean, I say of De Vries.
They promised De Vries 3 more races to come good. And so you might be seeing, by Silverstone, a new driver in that car if things don't go better. We'll keep an eye on it at Imola. I feel for him. It's a horrible, I mean, this is the underbelly of the sport. And unfortunately, I like Marko, but I don't like the way he puppeteers his drivers and dangles that, I mean, look, we could do a whole documentary on the revolving door that is the Red Bull driver. And, it's tough. And unfortunately, Verstappen, is the benchmark. And until somebody steps up and starts beating him, and if I had to put money on whether it would be Lawson or Ricciardo, I'd say it would be Lawson.
Yeah, it's like all these stories come out of Red Bull every time. The disappointment, and we've seen it. We've Gasly and Albon that it sometimes can end good, even though it's probably devastating at the time. So
yeah,
hey,
we'll see. It's going to be interesting, but keep an eye on De Vries for Imola. He needs a good result. He needs to finish in the top 12.
I saw a really